sun is setting over the aquarium. Warm light is filtering through the rows of tanks. The fish have had a busy day. Now, night is falling, and it's time for the fish to rest. Let's visit each one and help them prepare for bedtime. Good evening, Mr. Tuna. You've been swimming all day in the big tank, opening your mouth to eat, moving so fast and eating so much. Everyone's been watching you. Now, it's time to rest your strong tail and dream of new adventures. Tomorrow you'll swim even faster and explore new parts of the ocean. Let's say goodnight to Mr. Tuna and wish him sweet dreams. Good night, Mr. Tuna. Good evening, Miss Octopus. Have you been exploring the rocks, moving around with your long, slippery legs? Now, it's time to settle down and rest your 8 big arms. Tomorrow, new treasures and hiding places await you in the deep sea. Can you help Miss Octopus get ready for bed and say goodnight? Good night, Miss Octopus. Good evening, little sardines. You've been swimming with your friends in a big group. Your shimmering school moves like a glowing whirlpool. The leader guides you all. Tomorrow, you'll shine even brighter as you swim in perfect harmony with your friends. Let's say goodnight to the sardines and wish them sweet dreams. Good night, sardines. Good evening, Mrs. Lobster. You've been walking along the sea floor with your springy tail and pointed claws. Now it's time to rest your tough body and dream of playful adventures. Tomorrow you'll discover new paths and hidden places in the vast ocean. Will you snuggle up to Mrs. Lobster and say goodnight to her? Good night, Mrs. Lobster. Good evening, Mr. Flying Fish. You've spent all day gliding near the water's surface, riding the wind. Now it's time to fold your proud wings and rest. Tomorrow the breeze will lift you higher, taking you on new and exciting journeys. Let's say goodnight to Mr. Flying Fish and wish him sweet dreams. Good night, Mr. Flying Fish. Good evening, Mrs. Crab. You've been walking on the seabed with your tough shell. Now, it's time to clean your shell with your big claws and get ready for sleep. Tomorrow, your claws will help you discover new things and protect your friends. Can you help Mrs. Crab feel cozy and say goodnight? Good night, Mrs. Crab. Good evening, Mr. Yellowtail. You've been darting through the big tank swiftly and wisely. Now, it's time to rest your body and dream of tomorrow's hunt. Tomorrow, you'll move even quicker, leading the way for others to follow. Let's say goodnight to Mr. Yellowtail and wish him good dreams. Good night, Mr. Yellowtail. Good evening, Miss Flounder. You've been hiding on the sea floor waiting for the perfect chance to hunt. Now, you've blended your body with the sand, camouflaged so well. It's time to stop hunting and go to sleep. Tomorrow, you'll surprise everyone with your cleverness and skill. Let's say goodnight to Miss Flounder and wish her peace in the sea. Good night, Miss Flounder. Good evening, Mrs. Freshwater Crab. You've been walking slowly along the riverbank, drinking cool water. Now it's time to rest your hard shell and sleep under the starlit sky. Tomorrow, the river will guide you to new places full of life and beauty. Can you help Mrs. Freshwater Crab feel comfy and say goodnight? Good night, Mrs. Freshwater Crab. Good evening, Mr. Anglerfish. You've been lighting up the seabed all day with your glowing lantern. Now it's time to rest and turn off your light, dreaming of fun. Tomorrow, your light will shine even brighter, helping you find new wonders. Let's say goodnight to Mr. Anglerfish and wish him sweet dreams. Good night, Mr. Anglerfish. Good evening, Mr. Striped Jack. You've been swimming so handsomely with your beautiful body. Did you find your mate? Now it's time to rest your lovely body and dream of spending time with her. Tomorrow you'll swim even closer to the one you care about. Will you help Mr. Striped Jack settle down and say goodnight? Good night, Mr. Striped Jack. Good evening, Big Grouper. You've been waiting and pouncing on food, swallowing with your big mouth. Now, it's time to stop waiting and rest. in the rocky cave. Tomorrow, the ocean will bring you new surprises and challenges to overcome. Let's say goodnight to Big Grouper and wish him good dreams. Good night, Big Grouper. Good evening, Miss Squid. You've been hanging near the top of the tank, watching everything outside with your long body. Now it's time to find a quiet place to rest. Tomorrow, you'll see new sights and meet new friends in the sea. Will you help Miss Squid calm down and wish her a peaceful night? Good night, Miss Squid. Good evening, Mrs. Red Snapper. You've been swimming so beautifully in the sea, your red body shining brightly. Now it's time to take a deep breath and rest. Tomorrow, your bright colors will light up the sea even more. Can you help Mrs. Red Snapper relax and wish her a peaceful night? Good night, Mrs. Red Snapper. Good evening, Mr. Seahorse. You've been keeping watch over your precious eggs all day. Now it's time to settle nearby and warm them through the night. Tomorrow, your little ones will be even closer to hatching, ready to explore the ocean. Will you stay close to Mr. Seahorse and wish him a peaceful night? Good night, Mr. Seahorse. Good evening, Mr. Sheep's Head. With your striking stripes, you've been wandering around the tank scaring off your enemies. Now, it's time to find a quiet spot and rest your powerful jaws. Tomorrow, you'll protect your home and friends with even greater strength. Let's say goodnight to Mr. Sheep's Head and wish him sweet dreams. Good night, Mr. Sheep's Head. Good evening, Mrs. Hermit Crab. You've been searching for the perfect shell to call home. Now, it's time to find a peaceful place by the shore and rest. Tomorrow, you'll discover the coziest shell and feel more at home than ever. Let's say goodnight to Mrs. Hermit Crab and wish her sweet dreams. Good night, Mrs. Hermit Crab. Good evening, Miss Flatfish. You've been lying on the seabed, blending in with the sand to hide from predators. Now, you've melted into the sea floor so that no big fish can see you. It's time to stay hidden and sleep peacefully. Tomorrow, your camouflage will keep you safe while you explore new areas. Let's say goodnight to Miss Flatfish and wish her a restful night. Good night, Miss Flatfish. Good evening, Mr. Whale Shark. You've been gracefully swimming through the big tank with your giant body. Now it's time to find a safe spot and rest. Tomorrow, your graceful movements will inspire all who see you. Let's stay close to Mr. Whale Shark and wish him sweet dreams. Good night, Mr. Whale Shark. Good evening, Mr. Mackerel. You and your friends have been swimming in circles in the big tank. Swimming together helps keep you safe from big fish. Now, it's time for the whole group to rest. Tomorrow, you'll swim faster and stronger with your friends, safe and sound. Let's say goodnight to Mr. Mackerel and wish him sweet dreams. Good night, Mr. Mackerel. Good evening, Mrs. Sea Turtle. You've been swimming at your own pace, slowly and steadily. Sometimes you come up to the surface for a breath. Now, it's time to find a calm spot and sleep. Tomorrow, the waves will carry you to new, peaceful places to explore. Let's say goodnight to Mrs. Sea Turtle and wish her sweet dreams. Good night, Mrs. Sea Turtle. Good night, Aquarium. All the fish are now resting peacefully under the stars, snuggled up together. The sound of the waves and the tides are playing a soothing lullaby. Close your eyes and dream of the great ocean together with your friends. Tomorrow, the sea will bring new adventures and wonders for everyone. Sweet dreams to all the little fish. Good night, Aquarium.